Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino DeGregory, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino DeGregory.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino DeGregory. Today's episodes will explore how kindness, self-awareness, and leadership shape meaningful careers and thriving workplace cultures. Our guest, Katie O'Malley, is a career coach, workplace consultant, and leadership educator with 20 years of experience spanning the nonprofit, corporate, and education sector. She founded Encourage Coaching in 2018 with a mission to provide high-quality, financially accessible coaching services. Since then, she's supported over hundreds of clients across the US and UK, helping them build leadership confidence, design fulfilling careers, and cultivating courageous workplace. Why is our conversation important today? Because leadership and career growth often come with challenges, uncertainty, self-doubt, and cultural barriers in the workplace. Katie's experience in coaching and leadership development gives us powerful tools to navigate these challenges with clarity, authenticity, and courage. Welcome, Katie. It's such a pleasure to have you here. To start, could you please share a bit about your journey and your background?
Absolutely, Gino. It is just a delight to be here with you and to have the opportunity to connect with your audience. I know that my journey towards leadership development, career development really started during my time in college. I was a political science major, which is not how I ended up becoming a coach, but I think it was my value or the strong value I place on the practice of altruism that really pulls throughout my career. So in college, that space where we're 18, 19, 20 years old, being asked to make decisions about our entire lives before our brains are even fully formed, which happens around the age of 25. I thought that politics and engaging in politics was going to be the way that I could really have a meaningful impact on the world and the communities that I was connected to. And so graduated college in 2004, which was in a presidential election year, had the opportunity to work on one of the coordinated campaigns for John Kerry out in Minnesota. And oh my goodness, if that wasn't the hardest I ever worked in my entire life until I became a small business owner.
Right.
And it was 7 days a week, 16-hour days, and the drive of this is the most important election of our time, right? Which I think is a narrative that we continue to hear with every election that happens. But at 21 years old, it really felt that way. And when it came time to then decide, once the election had ended, what my next step was going to be, I realized I needed more security and stability than the campaign life really allowed for. And so transitioned into the nonprofit sector. So again, carrying forward that value of altruism, I moved out to New York City, spent a few years working for an organization called the Innocence Project. There, the mission of the organization was to exonerate folks who had been wrongfully convicted using DNA evidence that wasn't available at the time of their conviction. And my role in that, alongside my boss, was to raise the money to pay the attorney's fees, the legal fees, the DNA testing, to raise the money to help our exonerees reintegrate into a world that looked very different than the one that they left prior to being incarcerated wrongfully for 20, 30, 40 years. So folks were going into prison, 16, 17, 18 years old, coming out in their 40s and their 50s to limited family, no friends, and a world that looked nothing like the one that they had left, right? And so while I knew intellectually what I was doing allowed for all of these services to unfold for our exonerees, I felt pretty disconnected from the work because I was working with the donors and not necessarily the population we were serving. Right. And I know you're out on the East Coast in Virginia. It is hard to live in New York City on any salary, much less a nonprofit salary. And so I ended up moving home to Chicago and spent the next 3.5, 4 years working for the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, doing very similar fundraising and development work, but had that same kind of feeling of disengagement, dissatisfaction, even though I knew the work that I was doing good in the world. For some reason, I just, at the end of the day, didn't feel that sense of joy or engagement with it, and made the assumption wrongfully that it was all about salary and compensation. And so I saw a lot of my friends having success in the field of commercial real estate and made that switch into that field. So going from nonprofit to commercial real estate, it was about the strongest 180-degree shift I think a person could make in their career. And had I met with a career coach or career counselor, I know they would have said to me, Katie, there's a values discrepancy here that you might want to investigate before you make that move. But I didn't do that. And I will tell you, on the very first day, I knew I had made the wrong choice. But I was raised not to quit. And you especially don't quit something you've just started, much less quit without another job, which is something we can talk about later on, because I would not necessarily advocate for that for everyone. And the time that I spent in commercial real estate really took a significant toll on my mental health and well-being. And in 2012, I ended up taking a medical leave of absence from work for mental health, which at the time was essentially unheard of. We were hardly talking about mental health at all in 2012, unless it was in a pretty stigmatized way, much less an employer's responsibility to employees around well-being and mental health. And so it was during that medical leave and during the treatment and healing process that I realized a couple of things. One, I cannot stay in an environment that's causing me harm. And two, I'm not the only person struggling with this idea of, my gosh, I did everything I was supposed to do from elementary school through high school through college, and to be sold this bill of goods where I'm now sitting in a cubicle crying every day. This is not what work is meant to be. I always tell my clients that at worst, work should have a net neutral impact on your life. And at best, it's elevating your life outside of work. And so it was during that period of treatment and healing that I decided to go back to school and get a master's degree in counseling so I could help people at the intersection of mental health and work, and started that program in pretty short order right after my medical leave, and realized pretty quickly through my graduate degree studies that insurance companies are not keen to cover conversations about work because work is not a mental health diagnosis. Even though, I heard that loud and clear, even though work leads to burnout, and the symptoms of burnout are essentially identical to those of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. So I finished the degree, but instead of getting licensed as a therapist, I actually started working in higher education down at the University of Texas at Austin, helping students in their career and leadership development. So trying to cut off the missteps and the misaligned choices of the past. During that time, I got credentialed as a board certified executive coach, career coach, and leadership coach through the Center for Credentialing and Education. Spent just under 2 years at the University of Texas at Austin before, again, moving home to Chicago. So there's a theme where I keep leaving Chicago and then keep coming back. Came back in 2017. I do not plan on going anywhere, but I came back in 2017 for an opportunity at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where I was working with our full-time MBA students in their career and leadership development. And this time in my career, these 5 years were incredible. The students were incredible. The faculty was incredible. I was surrounded by brilliant minds and brilliant colleagues. And even though I knew what I was doing, this theme keeps coming back, was really in service of helping this group of students who would come in every year. It's a very elite group of students and very elite group of folks who get to access that kind of exceptional education and all of the bells and whistles that come along with it. So in 2018, with the permission of my boss, I was like, I just want to build something and see if see
Yeah.
if folks will come. If I offer these services to the public writ large, will there be a market for it? So did no market, I'm not a business person, right? I would always joke with my students at Booth, I didn't get hired for my business acumen. I'm here for how I understand human development and human
Right.
behavior and interpersonal effectiveness. And so opened Encourage Coaching and Consulting in 2018. No business plan, no marketing plan, no personas, no niche,
Yeah.
just this idea of I have this skill set and I'm here to help. Got an
Right.
LLC, built a website on Wix, did a Facebook business page, and
There you go.
my very first client was actually a former board member at the AIDS Foundation of Chicago.
Okay.
And so to anyone out there who's looking to start a business or a coaching practice or a
Sure.
service-based business, I will always tell them your first clients will be people who are already in your network and likely in your dormant network, right? So this idea of folks that you've, the connection has fizzled for no other reason than life and
Right.
people get busy. And so that client had a great experience, referred me to 2 other small business owners who then had a great experience. And the business just kept organically growing from there.
Right.
So in 2022, as we were starting to come out of the pandemic, and not out of the pandemic, but as things were starting to open up
Right.
and we felt more safe to be in physical spaces together, and the Great Resignation happened, I was
Right.
not only working 9 to 5 at Chicago Booth, but then seeing private clients 5 to 9 and on the weekends. And I realized I cannot be preaching work-life balance to my clients and not
Yeah.
practicing this myself.
Yep.
And so 2022, Gino, that was the year I turned 40, and basically said to myself, if I'm not going to go all in on me now and really bet on myself now, when am I going to do it? And worst case scenario, this doesn't pan out. I go back to working
Right.
for someone else in 2023. And I'm sure you can appreciate this so much. It is amazing what you can do for a small business when you can invest 40 to 50 hours a week in it instead of just waiting for folks
Right.
to come your way to service. And now 3 years and 1 month later, I'm not only feeling the most satisfied and engaged in my work as I have in my whole life, but I'm also experiencing the most financial success that I have in my career to date. And I'm just delighted to be able to be here with you today and dig into different elements of this story.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your background and your journey. And first of all, congratulations.
Thank
What an
you.
amazing story. And I do enjoy Chicago. I've been there the first time last year. It was beautiful, beautiful city. And the food is just amazing. Definitely will go back. So,
And when you do, please let me know. Just don't come back in January or February. We have a high of 0 degrees Fahrenheit today.
yeah, definitely don't like that. Probably in the summer sometime. But
Yes.
but thank you for I mean, it's amazing. And there's a lot of took notes on some things that I definitely want to expand on from your past and see how we can share this with our audience. But the first question that I ask after introducing our guest is, what does being a kind leader mean to you?
Yeah, this is a great question, and obviously the namesake of your podcast. For me, I think kindness and niceness often get intertwined in ways that are unhelpful. And so when we talk about kindness, what I really like to think about that as is doing no harm. This practice in the field of counseling that we call non-maleficence, right? So doing no harm doesn't mean necessarily always going over and above for someone or trying to become, as a leader, the therapist for your team
Right.
member or for your employee as well. The goal isn't necessarily, when we are showing up in kind ways, to make people's lives better and to solve their problems, but to ensure that whatever we are doing in the workplace between 9 and 5, 8 and 4, 10 and 6, whatever those hours happen to be, that as a leader, you are not engaging in behaviors and practices that cause your employee to walk out of the building, close their laptop, and then run to their therapist because of the harm that's been done to them in the workday. Now, I will say, going back to my experience in commercial real estate, that was a toxic work environment for me. It's not a toxic work environment for everybody, right?
Right.
But for me, because of the values misalignment, the interests, the preferences, the ways of communication, it wasn't a good fit. And that was really toxic for me. And nothing about that workplace felt kind.
Right.
But that workplace could have done a better job of not causing harm to its
Right.
employees, right? And so when I think about kindness, I think about how are we showing up in ways for our team members, for our colleagues, as employees, for our leaders, in a way that is going to have a net neutral impact on the rest of their day, week, month, year.
Right. Right. Beautiful. Thank you. I mean, I appreciate that background. And you're right. I mean, a lot of the misconception where, when I share kind, or share about my podcast, people are, kind leader. Well, you're just a nice guy or a nice, people out there. But it's not just about the niceness, as you said. It's about the kind leader. And I connect it together because it's that accountability. You want to care about people, but also you want to keep them accountable for the things that you are working together or doing together. And that's the misconception that I want to kind of share. I mean, one thing that you said, though, about that, I'm going to pick on that commercial
Sure.
real estate kind of experience. I believe, right, and this is why one of my theories here, and my hypothesis, that any industry, right, and any business can have this mindset of, leading with kindness, right? Leading no matter what, in the government, in real estate, in technology. I'm a technology background, right? And a lot of it is about zeros and ones, and and the commercial side is about, profitability, and it's not about, the people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about the people that are driving everything within an organization.
Absolutely.
Right? You can have the best product, you can have the best things out there, but it's really ultimately about the people. And how are you as a leader focusing on helping your people, right? So in that organization you were in, it was very similar, and I don't want to necessarily go too deep and highlight any names, but I just wanted to pick on that because something you said about it wasn't for you. And I think, the question I'm about to ask is, was it the industry or was it the particular leadership and culture of that organization that led you to feel that way?
Yeah, for that experience, it was both, right?
Okay.
So there was, for me, a real disconnect of it's not clear to me how we're doing good in the world, right? And so if we go back to where I started, this value of altruism that really drives me, I didn't see that in the industry. So that was the first piece of the misalignment. I think the second was around culture and the behaviors that were accepted and there were no consequences for.
Gotcha.
Now, with that being said, when I finished my graduate degree and went to go work at the University of Texas at Austin, there was an interest alignment, there was a values alignment externally, right? So to what the students saw and parents saw and community saw, there was a very strong values alignment, but those values were not practiced within the workplace culture. It was not practiced with the employees, the things that were espoused for, here's how we care for the Austin community, here's how we care for our students.
Gotcha.
Those same values were not applied to employees. And that was, again, there was a reason I was only there for 20 months, right? I couldn't tolerate that kind of inconsistency and incongruence.
Okay. And that's great feedback for leaders out there, kind of making sure that it's not just one segment, right? I can be a kind leader just to certain employees, right? Or certain customers or certain, it's all or nothing, I feel like, right? And I that allows this kind of sentiment or thought process that I have as it relates to this effort. But going back to careers, and I picked on real estate just because I was talking to my kid last week, and he's a junior in high school, and he's my middle kid. I have an older he's already in college, and he's trying to figure out. He's always been very, just very chill kind of guy. He's a good student, does good grades, and he talked to me and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about maybe real estate is something for me." And, as you're talking about careers, you mentioned that real estate. It's like, how do you, as a leader, right? And I'm picking as it relates to your background and experience, like, how do you coach and how do you, as a leader, how do you, go into conversation, right? Because I'm IT and I'm like, oh, why don't you come and do IT with me? And it's like, I don't want to be like you. Or even, so you see what I'm trying to ask here?
Yeah. It's, is the curiosity, do you know why he's interested? Or
Yeah, the curiosity is because I'm going back to your background, and this I'm tying it back, and I'm
yeah.
using my kid as an example here, right? What caught my attention, you were in that project where you're helping transition people from being in jail and then transitioning into the
Yes.
world, right? And that is one mindset or process as it relates to they're coming into a new world where they don't know what's happening, and I equate that to a kid going into not knowing what the real world is, right? I'm not saying they're the same individual, the same people, because they have different experiences, and I'm not trying to make them equal as it relates to who they are as an
No.
individual.
I didn't experience it that way.
Right. But what I'm trying to say here is that mindset of the unknown, and how do you, as coming back to the kind leadership, how do you care? How do you help those individuals, right, with that career path?
Yes. And so for a long time, really, holy cow, until I got to graduate school and made the choice to go back to school at 30, I was convinced that following a person's passion, that following my passion, that was the way to go, right? And I did that for about 12 years, and it didn't result in the outcomes that I was hoping for, or what the literature and pop psychology was saying the result would be. Follow your passion, you'll be fine. There is a great educator and entrepreneur. His name's Dr. Scott Galloway. He also has a podcast that you might want to tune into sometime. But essentially, he turns that on his head and says, we need to start encouraging folks and kids to follow their natural talents, to really invest in those talents so that they can get to the upper echelon of being able to perform that particular skill or strength. That's what's going to lead to success in our passions. That's what we get to do as a result of being successful and having the means to be able to do that. And my gosh, if I had listened to what family and friends and guidance counselors were telling me, I would have found my way to the helping professions of counseling and coaching 12 years earlier, because what people always said is, oh my gosh, Katie, you are such a great listener. I feel so safe with you. It's so obvious that you care and you're trying to understand me. And all I could think, Gino, was this is not important enough. That working with people one-on-one, this is not important enough. And I needed it to be more macro, because that was my passion. I'm going to change the world with kindness in some way. And what I realized later on in life, and definitely through the pursuit of my graduate degree, was my role, the reason that I'm here, is to create change one person at a time. We change workplace cultures, one employee at a time, one career path at a time, one team at a time. And so to take this back to the conversation with your son, being able to engage with him in a way, all right, here are the skills and strengths and talents that it really takes to be successful in the field of real estate. Where's their alignment for you? Do you want to continue to pursue and invest in further developing these strengths and talents? Or is there a way that these strengths and talents might lend themselves to a path that's different? Is that responsive, Gino?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was trying to tie it all together there, having that conversation with kid as well as your background experience. And what you said, one person at a time, is that impact really that you're making, that it's people want this macro thing, as you said, right? It's like, oh, we're going to change the world, but it starts with one person at a time. I love that. One person at a time. And that's sort of the mindset that I have within my organization is we have, how you're helping your clients with their career path. I'm trying to create, or I'm creating a platform for my folks to create their career. Because I know nowadays it's like people come in 1 year, 2 years, and then move on to the next thing. But why not allow them to create a career path within the organization? There's a saying that I've been using every 2 years, people either grow or go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So every 2 years, those individuals are going to want to grow to the next level, within your organization, or they're going to go find that growth into another organization. Right. So why not create that career path, that culture? Right. So coming back to the building a courageous culture as it relates to how do we empower and provide the necessary tools to our folks in our organization to really become the better version of themselves in the organization.
Absolutely. And the idea of employee well-being, right? When our employees are well, the bottom line gets boosted. There's no way to mince that or think differently. When you have someone coming into work who is physically, emotionally, socially, financially well, and doesn't have the worries and the stressors of not having those things, their performance is going to be 10 times better. I just threw out a random number there, by the way. I don't know what the actual number is, but their performance will be better than someone who is struggling physically, emotionally, cognitively, socially, financially, because those worries, those basic needs are not being met. And so you are absolutely right. People either grow or they go if they're able to. The folks at the Gallup organization and WorkHuman came together in 2022 to really start to look at employee well-being, because how can you not in the midst of a global pandemic? And what they discerned is that there's actually 5 dimensions of employee well-being that employers need to target if they want to have a strong culture and a strong workplace. And that is career, financial, community, physical, and emotional well-being. And the piece on career, Gino, that you just spoke to so eloquently is that for employees to feel well in terms of their career, they have to know that there's a path for them to advance, and they have to see other people who look like them advancing along that path. And if those 2 conditions are not met, they cannot be well in that dimension of work.
I agree 100%. And on top of that, I think is having an environment where is the vision. And you talk about the purpose wasn't there for different organizations that you work, and now your purpose is to impact every single individual one at a time, right? To help, this world. For me, is looking at an organization. I share this with other leaders. Is that when you're looking at growing your organization, it's not just about the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the people. Again, I go back to the people and creating that career. Not only working with the individual to see themselves, visualize themselves in that growth path, becoming a consultant, for example, with us, a senior consultant, a director, and there are different stages of the way to get there. But then also, as the leader of an organization that I am, I also create a crystal clear vision of where the company is going, with the core values, the mission, and the purpose of who we are and what we do for our customers.
Yeah.
That's very important for people to know, because it's definitely, and I use the word selfish just because people need to take care of themselves. You got to take care of yourself first, right? So people need to be selfish about, okay, who am I? How am I contributing to my, improving myself, contributing to this organization? And does this align with my purpose, with my vision, with everything that I'm trying to do? Because it's not just about their services, it's about their passion. And I asked every time I meet with my employees, or for whatever reason, it's like I ask them, well, how are they doing? And then I always asking, is this the right, is this what you want to continue doing, right? Like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And that question's opened up so many opportunities for them to like, oh, I can think about, I'm not just this person. I could be this person or that person, right?
Yeah. And that is, before I start working with any client one-on-one, one of the questions that I ask them is, if we were to hop on a call a year from now. So, Gino, it's you and me, February 18th, 2026. We're hopping on a call a year from now. And the question I would ask you is, what are you most excited to tell me about? What change in your life are you most excited to tell me about personally and professionally? This could be everything from, oh my gosh, Katie, I'm finally getting 8 hours of sleep a night,
Right.
to I was able to take that vacation or buy that home or live in this new apartment or got that promotion or whatever it happened to be. That really helps me to focus in on what are the values and the beliefs of this client to help them get what they want, not what I want for them, not what their employer wants for them, but what they want for themselves. And I like, we always hear, what do you see for yourself 5 years
Right.
from now,
Right.
10 years from now? That can feel so abstract,
Yeah.
right? When it's like, I am just trying to get through today. And you want me to tell you what I want 5 years? Give me a more condensed time frame there.
Right.
And
Right.
you can really get to what people believe is possible for themselves, and then both challenge and support them to kind of tick that up a bit.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I live in the future. So my mind is always like 5, 10 years from now. This is so easy. And I talk to my wife. She's like, what are you talking about? What are we doing tomorrow? It's like, no, tomorrow it's going to happen. No problem. It's like 10 years from now. So it's just the personality too, right? But coming back to mental health, I think you hit a nail on the head as it relates to, that's very important in an organization, because if you don't have people that are balanced with work, life, as well as not only passionate about what they're doing, but not having the fear of coming into work. Because that's what it is, right? A lot of people are, and I don't want to get into the politics, but a lot of stuff that's happening in the government, a lot of government employees right now, it's just so much fear right now. Their mental health is just off the charge because the unknown, what is going to happen, right? So the mental health is very important. Do you have any recommendations for leaders out there to continue to help, or what are some of the things that they can do to make sure that they're helping their employees or teams?
Sure. I think at a very foundational level, it's learning about and engaging in practices that result in psychological safety. So again, going back to this idea of kindness, not niceness, psychological safety, which was researched and identified by Dr. Amy Edmondson out of Harvard in 1999. So we just passed the 25-year anniversary of this concept, and it's really buzzy, right? Psychological safety. And people often just equate it to, oh, everyone's nice to each other at work. And it's not about that. It is having a psychologically safe team environment, workplace environment, and culture requires that people can show up to work absent of interpersonal fear. What is this colleague going to say to me? What is this boss going to say to me if I disagree, if I misstep? Do I have safety or am I in fear? And so really, really doubling down on how are we creating psychologically safe environments, which again, one of the things that I do workshops on with clients and teams is around communication. And so understanding that not everyone likes to be communicated with in the same way. How we communicate tends to be how we also like to be communicated with. And being willing to flex that behavior in that moment to meet your team member or employee where they're at gets to that piece around self-awareness too. We can't have a psychologically safe work environment if we don't have leaders and employees that are self-aware, because then folks are just running around unintentionally causing harm because, to your point, what you brought up in the beginning, I'm just being authentic. I'm being myself, right? And so there's a difference between authenticity and thinking that that is carte blanche to be able to show up however you want, right? So when I work with either clients or with my students and they're like, well, Katie, you're asking me to flex my behavior authentically. I would never show up in that way. I'm like, okay, understanding the behavior may not align with how you've come to know yourself. Does the underpinning value actually align with the outcome that you're looking for and who you aspire to be? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And then I say, all right, so is it really inauthentic to show up in a way that's going to be more effective, even if it doesn't necessarily align with how you would show up as naturally, right? And so as long as it is rooted in values and values based, it is authentic.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and then that's what's needed, to be honest, nowadays, and really, and the purpose of this podcast is to share that there are other ways to lead through kindness, to empathy, and the key word that keeps coming up is self-awareness, right? Self-awareness of who you are and how are you expressing yourself to this world? Mm-hmm. It's critical,
I'm sure. I mean, you have your own company and your team and your employees and your clients. I'm sure there was a point in your life where you recognized, my gosh, I am never going to be able to lead others until I can lead myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the most important things too, is having the self-discipline to do the hard work of your humanness.
Yep.
Because, oh my gosh, are you watching the TV show Severance, Gino? It's Severance. On Apple TV.
No, not yet.
So it's just big picture. Yeah. The premise is that these folks are getting this kind of chip or device implanted in their brain, where when they take the elevator down to work, they are severed from their outside self so that they can just be the worker doing the work.
Oh, wow.
In the workplace, right? And then that person takes the elevator up and then they reintegrate with who their outside self is, but they have no awareness of what's happening in work. Wow. And the other person has no awareness of what's happening outside of work. And this is what people will say so often. I'm a different person at work than I am at home and I'm miserable. I'm like, no shit. It is exhausting to be two different people throughout the day and try and pretend that who I am as Katie O'Malley or who you are is going to be different at work than it is at home. Who we are is who we are. And if we try and separate that, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and that's I would love to pull on that thread, but we may have to circle back on that one because
this conversation is too good. I'm sorry, I'm taking us down all these different side streets. But
I like that one. I'm gonna definitely look to see if we can bring you back to talk about that because all I have to say is I've known my wife since I was 18. We were both very young when we met each other, and she always sees me as that kid that she met. Like I've been doing this for 17 years. She will always bring me down to like, you're just a kid. I mean, what are you talking about, right? And for the first 10 years of my career, I was that. This is how I act in business, and here is how I am be at home, right? And I've been working, and this continues to be a struggle. I continue to merge that to become that authentic self, whether I'm leading the company or leading my house with my wife and my kids. So that's a very important topic to discuss. So definitely we'll put a pin on that and come back to it.
I would love that.
So what's the vision from your perspective of, the next decade of leadership? How do you see that transforming as we're talking about kind leadership and the way you're coaching your clients and stuff like that?
Yeah. There have been so many changes in the last decade, right? From 2015 to 2025 in the workplace that got us to today. The future of work and the research that's being done for the next 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, what's coming down the pike. There's so many things that I think we have to be ready for. But in terms of leadership, really focusing in at the systems that are at play, right? And so what I mean by that is, how are we looking at ensuring that the company or the organization is making work for everybody, right? And I say not everyone, but everybody. We each have a body. We are moving through the world with it. Yep. And how are we ensuring that from a career, financial, community, social, and emotional perspective or physical perspective, that work is working for everyone? And so unless they're focusing in on those 5 dimensions, training their leaders with the resources to enact practices that are going to help elevate those 5 dimensions of workplace well-being, I don't know that we're ever going to get there, right? And so I will pause there because I know we are running out of time.
No worries. That's a great answer. And, so I appreciate that. So let's go into some rapid questions that I have for you. So what's one book every leader should read?
Teams by Richard Hackman, professor emeritus from Harvard.
Awesome. What's your favorite piece of career advice that you give?
Start before you're ready. Not ready to apply for that job? Apply for it anyway. Not ready to take on that promotion? Take it anyway. Not ready to go back to school? Let's start getting you on the path to go. Action will always be the best antidote to any career anxiety that you are experiencing.
Beautiful. One small act of courage leaders can practice daily.
Listening, really listening, and suspending judgment, identifying assumptions so that you can listen even better the next day.
Very nice. I love it. If you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
I would have coffee with Kurt Vonnegut Jr. He's an author, a satirist, just a brilliant mind offering social commentary that had been written, Gino, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s that is still relevant today. And he has informed so much of my worldview, what folks call tragic optimism. So this idea of we can still be hopeful without engaging in toxic positivity and recognizing this sucks right now, and I can take an action and make a choice and have tomorrow be different. For me, that was one of my takeaways from all of his work and all of his reading. And I would just love to be able to be in conversation with him over a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that would be great. I would join you as well. Very curious on that. Well, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Sure. I think the two places where you can get the best insight into who I am and how Encourage Coaching operates is on LinkedIn or Instagram. Instagram is Encourage Coach Chicago. LinkedIn, just / Kate O'Malley. You can find all of our content there. Also visit the website, encouragecoaching.org, and you can always set up a discovery call from any of those three platforms. It's super simple. Just click on the link and book in, and we'll have a chat.
Awesome. Any final message you'd like to leave with our audience today?
In the words of Simon Sinek, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So if you want to be a kind leader, candor is the way, and candor and compassion can travel together. They are not mutually exclusive.
Wow. That gave me chills. That was really good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Katie, this conversation has been incredibly insightful. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experiences. And to our audience, thank you for listening to the Kind Leader podcast. And remember, be kind, bring value, rise together. Have an amazing day.